Rangers find themselves stepping into yet another moment of upheaval, and the sense around Ibrox right now is that the club has reached a point where decisions can no longer be delayed or softened. Supporters have watched the season unfold with a mix of frustration and disbelief, and the latest shake-up behind the scenes has only added to the feeling that the club is determined to reset its direction before any more damage is done. It has not been a quiet campaign by any stretch, and every few weeks seem to bring a fresh twist, another sign that something deeper has been bubbling away under the surface. The departure of key figures has become the clearest indication yet that those in charge have decided the current path is no longer sustainable. Even for a club used to navigating pressure, this moment feels like a significant turning point. The decision to part ways with two of the most influential people in the football and executive operations came with a jolt. It drew a hard line under a chapter that had cast a shadow over the early part of the season, marked by disjointed planning, questionable signings, and a widening disconnect between strategy and performance. Fans could see the cracks forming well before the official announcement, and the sense of uncertainty only grew as the team struggled to find rhythm on the pitch. It had reached a stage where even positive results could not cover the underlying issues, and the board knew the situation could not continue without risking long-term stability. When the departures were confirmed, it simply confirmed what many had suspected: a major reset was inevitable. The season had barely begun when the turbulence started. The early managerial change served as the first warning sign that the summer's rebuild had not been as robust as promised. The team looked unbalanced, unsure, and burdened by expectations that the new approach would immediately lift performances. The dismissal of the previous manager happened so abruptly that it left little space for supporters to understand what the long-term plan had been. That moment alone suggested the foundations were not as secure as advertised. When Danny Rowell stepped in, however, the team began to show the kind of structure and energy supporters had been desperate to see. The improvement on the park was real, and it helped calm some of the immediate concerns. Even so, it was becoming clearer by the day that the problems above him were not going to be solved simply by better performances on match day. The frustration in the stands, on social platforms, and in discussions around the club stemmed from one key issue. The summer window was supposed to be transformative. Supporters had been told the investment would reshape the squad and give Rangers the tools to challenge at the highest level again. Instead, it created more confusion. Several new arrivals struggled to make an impact, and those who were expected to lead the charge failed to adapt quickly enough to the demands of the club. This left fans questioning the judgment of those responsible for recruitment and long-term planning, and that pressure eventually settled squarely on the shoulders of the figures who have now departed. Once supporters lose confidence in the direction of the club, the atmosphere becomes difficult to manage and patience evaporates. Those close to the situation have suggested that the financial implications of the departures are not insignificant. Given the relatively short time the pair had been in their roles, the combined payoff is expected to run into the millions, adding yet another hefty cost to a season already weighed down by missteps. It is a stark reminder that poor judgment at the top level does not come cheap, and that wrong turns can leave long-lasting marks on a club's plans. The moves that had been hailed as forward-thinking in the summer unraveled much quicker than anyone anticipated, leaving the leadership with little choice but to intervene. And that financial hit will not be forgotten easily, particularly in a period when every penny is scrutinized. One of the most controversial decisions of the previous structure was the signing of a young striker whose fee soared into the eight-figure region. The move raised eyebrows across the support, not only because of the price, but because of the lack of immediate impact. It set an early tone of mistrust in the recruitment process, and the hesitation never really disappeared. When such a sizable fee is spent, supporters expect instant quality, and when it does not arrive, fingers are pointed. That signing, among others, became symbolic of the wider flaws in the summer rebuild. The exit of the chief executive added another layer to the situation. Although more established within the Rangers environment, he struggled to fully convince the fan base that his leadership offered clarity or long-term conviction. At a club of this size, where expectations never dip, leadership must be confident, visible, and in tune with the supporters' demands. Once doubts begin to form, they rarely fade away on their own. As results wavered and questions piled up, the pressure grew until a change became unavoidable. For now, the responsibility of guiding the club through this turbulent stretch has shifted to Fraser Thornton, stepping back into prominence as acting chief executive. His familiarity with the club's inner workings offers some continuity during a period that could otherwise feel even more unsettled. Under the new ownership group, who have been vocal about the need for lasting structure and a clearer strategy, the emphasis is now on identifying the next permanent figures who will shape the football and executive direction. The search is underway, and the names being considered are expected to reflect a desire for stability, competence, and long-term vision rather than short-term patchwork. Whoever takes on these roles will face a demanding environment, but also a valuable opportunity to rebuild trust and set the club on a more coherent path. Amid all the boardroom changes, a former Rangers captain has spoken about his own experience with the sporting director during his interim spell in charge. His account painted a picture of differing philosophies, especially regarding recruitment. He had hoped to implement a more Scotland-centered approach, pushing for players he believed could offer hunger and identity to the squad. Some of those targets went elsewhere, and in hindsight, his ideas now seem more aligned with what many supporters feel the club needed. His comments shed light on the disconnect that existed between the football department and the recruitment leadership, a disconnect that ultimately fed into the broader problems the club struggled to overcome. He also spoke candidly about the contrast between his relationship with the former chief executive and his far more limited interactions with the sporting director. The lack of alignment behind the scenes made the decision-making process inconsistent, and when decisions lack harmony, the results tend to reflect that. Even though he acknowledged that disagreements are part of football, he made clear that the outcomes of the summer window ultimately fell short of expectations and that accountability was unavoidable. The unfortunate reality is that when a club invests heavily, oversees a full squad reboot, and still ends up looking weaker than before, someone must answer for it. That is the weight of responsibility at a club of Rangers' stature. Supporters expect ambition, but they also expect competence. When those two do not match, the consequences come quickly. And now, with leadership sweeping the deck clean, the hope among supporters is that the next steps will finally bring the clarity and direction that have been missing. The reaction across the Rangers support has been a mixture of relief, curiosity, and a fair bit of lingering worry, because even though the changes were expected, Nobody pretends that the path ahead is going to be straightforward. There is a recognition that the board had to act, but there is also a sense that the club is standing at a crossroads yet again, and supporters are desperate for this to be the moment where the right foundations are finally laid. The sheer scale of the summer rebuild, the money spent, and the lack of meaningful return on that investment has left a bruise that will take time to fade. And the fact that so many of the new arrivals are still trying to find their feet only adds to the tension. People want to believe that the new direction will be stronger, more organized, and more aligned with the identity the support expects. But belief now has to be earned, not assumed. Inside Ibrox, the mood has shifted from one of silent frustration to open acknowledgement that the club cannot afford another season of missteps. The Americans, now steering the long-term plan, have made it clear that they want a structure built around competence rather than guesswork, and they seem determined to avoid the chaotic decision-making that defined the early part of the campaign. Their backing of Danny Roll has helped stabilize things on the pitch because they understand the value of consistency in the technical area, especially when the wider organization is undergoing a shake-up. But they also recognize that the next appointments in the football hierarchy must be the right ones. The club cannot afford another restart 6 months from now. There has to be a clear philosophy, a recruitment strategy with purpose, and leaders who understand the demands of managing a squad under the weight of Rangers' expectation. For many supporters, the most frustrating element of the past months was not simply that signings struggled, but that the squad lacked balance. There were gaps in key areas. Andinu, players who arrived without clear roles, and others who were brought in but never looked settled in the system they were meant to strengthen. It gave the impression of a rebuild assembled without a long-term blueprint. In contrast, Roll's approach has been far more structured, and that has offered a glimpse of what the squad might become if guided with proper planning. His use of a traffic light evaluation system for new signings has sparked interest because it shows a level of accountability that the support has been crying out for. Where some players are still rated as needing time, others have already shown enough to suggest they can play important roles in the months ahead. The difference is that now the assessments feel measured rather than hopeful. Supporters also know that the club has historically been at its best when the core of the team has a strong sense of identity. The comments from the former interim manager about wanting to bring in more homegrown talent struck a chord with fans who feel the club drifted away from that principle. The idea of adding players who understand the culture and pressure has always been valued at Rangers, and the fact that several potential signings fitting the profile were overlooked only fuels the conversation about what went wrong. While hindsight is a luxury, his words have added an interesting layer to the broader debate about the direction of recruitment. Meanwhile, the financial implications of the recent decisions continue to loom large. Rangers do not operate in a world where costly mistakes can be brushed aside, and the reality is that the departures behind the scenes have added to a significant bill. The new leadership is aware of this and knows that supporters expect a more prudent, strategic approach going forward. Careful investment does not mean smaller ambition. It simply means smarter choices. The future cannot rely on expensive gambles or signings made without a clear understanding of how they will fit into the system. This is why the upcoming appointments in the football department will shape more than just the next transfer window. They will influence how the club builds its identity for the next several years. There is also a growing recognition that communication with supporters must improve. The silence that surrounded much of the turmoil earlier in the season created an uneasy atmosphere and allowed speculation to run wild. When fans feel kept in the dark, frustration grows quickly, especially at a club where the support is deeply invested emotionally and financially. If the new leadership wants to build trust, transparency will play a crucial role. Supporters do not expect to be told every detail, but they do expect clarity of purpose. When there is a plan, people want to hear it. When there is a change, they want to understand why. Successful clubs with strong cultures do not hide behind ambiguity, and that is a lesson Rangers cannot ignore. On the pitch, the players are now carrying the responsibility of keeping the season on track, while the board navigates the search for its next leaders. It is always a unique challenge when the squad must perform during a chapter of off-field transition, but it can also be a galvanizing force. Footballers react to clarity, and role has provided that with an approach centered on discipline, structure, and confidence. The players who struggled early in the season now have a fresh opportunity to re-establish themselves, and the new arrivals who have yet to make an impact understand that they are being judged on what they can become rather than what they have been so far. That shift in tone has helped settle the dressing room and brought a sense of forward momentum that had been missing. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. Whispers drift in our Govan this morning. They set the blue half of the city fairly rattling as word spreads that Rangers president Andrew Kavanagh has laid down a stinging ultimatum to the first team squad. Nain inside the club is speaking on record, but the rumour mill is churning like the Clyde in a storm, and insiders close to the dressing room corridors say the message fae the top was blunt, brash, and delivered with a kind of steel that's no easily forgotten. Sources suggest Kavanagh marched into the inner sanctum at the Hummel Training Centre, eyes sharp as a dirk, and made it crystal clear that he expects a response fit for the badge no later. Nay excuses, nay drifting along, hoping things turn on their ain. The president, usually a measured figure, is said to have raised his voice just enough to let the gravity sink in, calling for hunger, grit, and a spark that's been missing far too often for his liking. A few players are rumoured to have been singled out, no by name but by implication. We talk a standard slipping, and the shirt weighing heavier than some are letting on. And source close to the squad described the mood as stony but stirred, as if the gauntlet being thrown down had jolted the room juiced a wee bit. There's even quiet chat that the board is prepared to take bold measures should the response fail to match the demand, though with that means exactly is left hanging in the fog, adding to the tensions simmering across the support. Fans outside Ibrox have already picked up on the buzz, muttering about leadership, pride, and the need for fire in the belly. Some say Kavanagh's outburst is exactly what's been needing to happen, a long overdue spark to shake the place awake. Others wonder if it hints at deeper fractures behind the scenes. Either way, the message is out there now, echoing Doon, Edmiston Drive. The president wants action, and he wants it pronto. The only question burning through Glasgow is whether the squad will rise to it, or whether this storm is only just beginning. Greetings, fans! Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned